Okay, so this afternoon we're sitting here with Marsha Stone from Benchmark Recovery in Austin, Texas. Marsha, it's great to see you.
Thank you.
We were talking earlier about when we met in Boise, Idaho,
Yes.
at the lovely John Southworth International Jet Setter Extraordinaire's Christmas party. How are you doing?
I'm just doing wonderful. It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me and giving me the opportunity to talk about Benchmark Recovery Center and learn a little bit more about your program.
That's exactly what we want you to do. We want to know all about Benchmark Recovery, what you do, how you do it, and why you do it, and perhaps you just start telling us about how Benchmark came around.
Sure, I'd love to. I was talking to you a little bit earlier about my personal history with Benchmark and why I'm so passionate about the program. We were originally known as Mark Houston Recovery, and Mark Houston was an internationally known 12-step speaker and worked in clinical treatment for a long time. And he had this, Mark was kind of a maverick, and he had this idea that he wanted to start a true recovery center and really focus on peer recovery support, meaning that man-to-man, woman-to-woman, taking someone through the working all 12 steps in a 90-day period in a highly accountable environment, followed with 90 days up to a year long of recovery coaching on the end of that as far as aftercare. And at the time in 2006 when we were formed, no one was doing anything like that. This words like recovery-oriented system of care, peer recovery support specialist, those just weren't in our vocabulary at that point in time. But Mark had this wild idea and started this amazing center in Texas, and we've been going ever since. In 2009, I helped Mark start the women's program, so now we have a men's program and a women's program. And really, we're best suited for someone who's been to treatment and who's tried to stay sober and really needs a longer-term approach and a highly accountable and supervised approach to the recovery process. So that's what we do.
I love it. I think one of the really kind of key things that when I look at what Benchmark does is the length of treatment that you provide. Mm-hmm. Clearly and statistically, we know that the longer you can spend in treatment, the better chances that you have for recovery. And I know
Sure.
you got this 90-day primary program,
Yes.
the 90-day secondary program, which
Yes.
you call the Segway program.
Mm-hmm.
And you go on from there further. Is it 15 months people can kind of spend with you in total, or what's that look like?
It is. It's 15 months. It's 90 days minimum on the ranch is what we call it. Okay. And so some people stay 4 months, some people stay 5 months. It just kind of depends on, what their history is, what their level of willingness and involvement to engage in the program is. So they're going to stay with us 90 days minimum at the beginning in the primary. And then secondarily, they're going to transition into our apartments, which are 100% Benchmark alumni and are staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to provide that smooth transition. And the 15 months comes in because when they leave the 90-day program, when they commence, as we call it, every resident gets their own certified recovery coach that works with them individually and with their family that first crucial year when they leave the residential portion. So, studies show that the first year is so important because that's when people are most prone to relapse. So we really, this program was sort of born out of frustration. We had this amazing program, and then what was happening when people were falling off. So we really wanted to insulate that and stop relapse if we could and interrupt it quickly if that was the process.
And I love it. One of the things that we've learned, particularly in the UK, is recovery managers, recovery advocates, recovery support, when you leave treatment and whilst you are in treatment, it is one of the key ingredients to success.
Absolutely.
We have our usual sign-off for clients is about 27 months.
Wow.
That doesn't mean we let them go. It means financially we're going to say, you've done enough financially, we're going to give you some responsibility back, but we're going to hold your hand for a little while and make sure you're okay. The difference we've seen in recovery rates is just
staggering.
It's staggering. So we I really love that support structure you have. The other thing I love, and I really want to talk to you about, is the work that you do with the families. Our experience with families is, particularly in the chronic relapse or the second or third go at treatment stages, they kind of get a bit despondent.
Right.
They kind of feel, what else can we do?
Right.
He's going to die. Do we do this, or do we just say enough's enough? And they kind of distance themselves. And we find that trying to bring them back in and being part of the recovery so that they can get recovery.
Right.
Is vital. Tell us how Benchmark work with families.
I love the word that you used about that, despondent, because that's absolutely the truth. What we see is parents or husbands or wives, the loved ones of the families of the addict or the alcoholic, they're terrified. They're terrified that no matter what they do, the solution isn't going to work. So what we decided to do, rather than have sort of this family weekend, this emotionally charged weekend, we decided to really make our family program integrative. So from the time the resident gets there to the time that they discharge 15 months later, the family is going to have a point of contact all the time. When they're in the residential portion of the program, it's the recovery manager that works day in and day out. And then when they discharge, and it's the Segway recovery coach, they're still going to have that person's cell phone number. They're still going to continue that contact, and they're going to have weekly when they're in residential and monthly when they discharge and they're in the transition process, written development notes so that they can see right in front of them or on the computer screen if they choose to use the web portal, actual information, hard quantifiable information about how their loved one is actually doing. What we try to encourage them to do is to walk with us through the process. We're not going to shoulder it all. You're not going to shoulder it all. What we're going to do is we're going to show your loved one, your son or your daughter, your husband or your wife, how to take responsibility for themselves in their recovery. And we're going to tell you, family, how to take ownership of your own recovery and how to protect yourself and to keep yourself safe and to keep your boundaries intact, no matter what's going on with the person when they're in Benchmark or when they transition.
The word that really sprung out for me was the boundary stuff. We work we probably work in a similar way, the ABCs. We've got accountability, we have boundaries, and we have consequences.
Right.
Not just for the addicts in recovery.
That's right.
For the family as well.
Absolutely.
Because unless they kind of understand the whole process, if you leave a crack, someone's going to fall through it.
We're loophole finders.
There you go. That's a lovely way of putting it. Loophole finders. We work internationally. We work all around the world. You have clients from all around the world. One of the things that we love doing is particularly with guys like yourselves, when the international clients, they leave the US.
Right.
That's where we pick up the slack, if you like.
Love it.
We work with you guys, we work through your whole program with you, and we carry on the recovery management. We keep them accountable, boundaries, and with consequences, and we report back to you. So if we've got a problem with them, we're going to come to you and say, little Johnny, he's had this little problem here. This is how we've managed it. Do you have any input that will help the family, the IP? And we get through it that way. We found that when we work closely with guys like yourselves, miracles happen.
Absolutely.
When we leave gaps, the devil pops up and grabs them, and it kind of all goes to pot, really. I'm so glad and I'm so grateful for your time, Marsha. Thank you so much for coming and talking to us today.
You're so welcome.
It's been lovely to see you. Thank you so much.
Nice to see you. Thank you so much for having me.
Guys.